Red Bird Reboot podcast. Are you ready to get rebooted, Cardinals fans? He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Red Bird Reboot.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome into the Red Bird Reboot podcast. We've had some technical stuff the last couple of weeks, which has been good because as far as while we've had issues mostly on my end, the Arizona Cardinals have had no issues whatsoever the last few weeks, at least for the most part. They have now moved to a 6-4 record heading into their bye week. And of course, here to talk with me all about it is going to be my co-host Marcos Labrada, aka at Pancake Soul. Marcos, Cardinals fans probably came into this season, and I remember after the loss to the Commanders, fans were going, man, why is it this team can take a one-season turnaround? Why can't that be something with us? You lose to the Packers and fall down to 2-4. People are like, what is this team? Is this going to be entering top 5, top 10 pick range? Cardinals go out against a couple of opponents who are not necessarily bad, awful teams per any say. It's not like they're in for the running for the top picks, but they're not good teams necessarily, we've been able to see. Still, they go out and at home, in front of the home crowd, put a pounding on the Chicago Bears, running up the score on them 29-9, and then following that up with a win 31-6 over the New York Jets. And it's not just with a strong run game. It's not just with Kyler Murray throwing the ball through the air. It's with the defense themselves being able to also step up as the Cardinals go out, run the ball against a Bears team that is notoriously pretty good, although they didn't have their main player, I believe, in Montez Sweat. And then the Jets team, which has been essentially a total train wreck, holding them in check with Aaron Rodgers having under, I believe it was it was got to be at least a career day for Kyler Murray passing the football. Well, Aaron Rodgers barely gets over 150 yards passing the ball despite all those weapons. Marcos, as we enter into the bye week, Cardinals fans have probably every right to be able to be impressed with the team's performance. Is this something that you are surprised by? Is this something expected? Or what are some of your thoughts about why the Cardinals are where they are in first place by themselves now in the NFC West?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. I am surprised about the outcome, and mostly because of the fact that I thought that they were going to be more of like a team that was going to slowly just build themselves up to that point and whatnot. What's surprising me is how the defense has been performing. The defense has been, at least to me, like somewhat of a project with all the young guys coming in and kind of like having like the old talent being flushed out and having the new talent come in, having to learn the system, having to adopt the system from a guy that we had no idea how he was going to do. Like Nick Rallis, we didn't know what his identity was going to be. We knew he was going to take from Jonathan Gannon, which, if we watch his past defenses, we can tell kind of an idea what he was going to do, but it's not going to be him calling the plays. It was going to be Nick Rallis. And with all that uncertainty, if you don't have a good defense in the NFL, consistency is kind of hard to attain, mostly because of the fact that you're not going to be in many games if you're getting blown out. Your offense can't play to its fullest potential. So somehow they were able to not only get this ragtag crew of players that were drafted in and some, veterans that were pulled over to like get this, this defense to play cohesively, but it really helped out with the offense, especially against the Bears. When they were able to play great defense, they were able to just blow them out on the ground game. And then this past game, probably have to say, like, this is probably the second best game Kyler Murray has put on film against the Jets. And it was just a masterclass. And it was a masterclass on two fronts. It was a masterclass by Kyler Murray executing, and it was a masterclass by what Drew Petzing was actually like scheming up. And I've kept consistent with this. I said so many times before, Drew Petzing is not the problem in this offense. There's a lot of nuance when it comes to this offense and working how it's supposed to work to its fullest potential. Now we're seeing that.
Absolutely. Yes, it's one of those places. I think I tweeted out that When you look at Kurt Warner's breakdown of the Cardinals offense, he said they're close. He said there's a few changes needed, whether it's the route choices and route concepts. Just we're not really putting some of the receivers in a place to be able to make some of these catches. You weren't necessarily getting guys as open designed as you could have as far as the strength. Some of that he even, I think, argued was talking about here's how you've used Trey McBride, getting the Cardinals offensive line in a spot where it was comfortable enough to be able to have some of that time where Kyler's not having to scramble early. That's something that we've seen adjusted. We've also seen them be able to use Kyler's legs a little bit more. And then, of course, the last part being Murray himself had to be able to take a bit more time, trust some of the guys in front of him, let the play be able to go out, and then be able to deliver the ball. And so it wasn't necessarily this is all Drew Petzing's fault. I think a lot of the adjustments we saw was Kyler has to play better, but there was not as much help being given him. Once we saw that help given and Kyler himself stepped up, it seemed like the two of them working together turned a solid Bears defense and a Jets defense that really had been probably the second best against the pass was just Swiss cheese to Kyler Murray. Let's start with the Bears game because I think it's important to recognize that this is against an offense that has since fired their offensive coordinator. This is a offense that has a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams with some weapons and no offensive line, unfortunately. The defense is the ones who really, honestly, I think, were able to step up and win this game for the Cardinals. Arizona had 2 punts on their first few drives, but Chicago ended up at least having I believe it was 3rd and 8 at their 18-yard line. They punted to Arizona's 32-yard line. Greg Dortch has a great return. So you're talking about the defense holds them back. You get that nice return. You're starting in Chicago territory. You then end up having the Cardinals just run the ball up the middle against the Bears with James Conner. Trey McBride rushes the ball in. Cardinals end up actually letting the ball go back to Chicago with a fumble. They end up holding the Bears out of the end zone on the defensive side despite that. The Bears end up going field goal, and take a knee at the end of the half. Meanwhile, the Cardinals on the offensive side, they end up taking the ball back, going a long drive after the Bears get that touchdown, go all the way in with James Conner, I believe, at least for the most part, being out for a lot of the play. After all, he ends up being hurt kind of on that. I believe it was the 4th and goal play. Trey Benson comes in, scores the touchdown. Cardinals are up 14-9. The defense, like the Chargers game, has been at home, and they have consistently held teams out of the end zone for at least the last, I want to say 4 games now. It's crazy how well they've done at home. The big play that really broke that game open that kind of showed the Bears were ready to just kind of pack it in was the touchdown to Amari DiMercato. It's at 3rd and 5. You're in a spot where you've got about probably 15 or so seconds left. Cardinals end up running the ball with Amari DiMercato. You're thinking this is great. You're able to essentially get the ball into a spot where you've got a chance to kick it with Chad Ryland before the half. Bears are just not prepared at all for that run to be able to come. They get a good block. DiMercato scores 53 yards. First time since 1970 that a team has scored a rushing touchdown from 20, they want to say 40 yards or more since the 1970s. Just an awful end of half defensive effort from Chicago, something that has them under fire for another week since they had the Hail Mary play from Jaden Daniels the week before. And then in the second half, they essentially just keep holding the Bears to field goals, and at that 24-9 type of game are essentially able to put up 1 or 2 more field goals to end it. They force a punt, a turnover on downs, punt, a safety, and then, of course, turnover on downs that essentially ends the game. It really felt, Marcos, like in this game, if there's 2 things we can talk about, the first is, like how we said, the defensive performance, being able to see Budda Baker fly everywhere, seeing the Cardinals get those 6 sacks. The second thing to at least remark about is that the Cardinals went in with a strong rushing attack against the Bears, and were essentially, Bears were not able to stop the run the entire day. Arizona controlled the ball, controlled the clock, and on defense, the Bears just have looked so hapless on offense. It's one of those places where there's been some Bears fans talking about, should the Cardinals have moved on from Kyler, moved to Caleb Williams? I think we're starting to get kind of a picture of how it's not just quarterback that is important, but situation is certainly very important for the Cardinals. You look at Kyler Murray, same team as he's been on for his entire career, goes from the 2021 Cardinals, now see the 2024 Cardinals, in between that, you've got the 22 Cardinals, and of course, he's injured for a really beat up Cardinals team the first half of 2023. This is a place, at least, where what we've seen is that Kyler, within this scheme and this system, with some of the young talent Arizona has accumulated, we're starting to see that franchise quarterback, this guy who's been playing at a top 5 level this year in the NFL, maybe top 10 quarterback overall. It's something that we've wanted to see from Kyler Murray since essentially he came into the league. And outside of that one snippet in 2021, it hasn't quite been there. And the fact that we're seeing it, Marcos, has to give fans a lot of hope moving forward, as well as in the present.
Well, I would say that in 2020, he also had himself, statistically speaking, that was his best year on paper so far. But that year was also a year where I would say he was playing at that level that I thought to myself, this is the success that you have to like kind of run on when it comes to Kyler Murray and the type of players you want to surround him with or the weapons you want to give him. That's why I kept pushing for big targets like Trey McBride, who's his number one target. He's just playing at an all-pro level. I would say if he gets at the end of the year, if Trey McBride ends up with 800 plus yards and all the touchdowns that he's gonna get, and he's still not called an all-pro, I'm gonna riot on that point because that's gonna be ridiculous. He's getting recognition for the type of play that he's putting out on the field, and of course Marvin Harrison Jr. being the tall, big receiver that he's supposed to be a good 50-50 ball, contested catch guy, but at the very least, he's a top, when it comes to talent, he's one of the top talented wide receivers out there. You give him those type of weapons and you give him a good run game, he goes into the game like knowing that he doesn't have to force the ball in most instances, which is something that he hasn't had to do this year. That's why he has so low interception numbers. He barely throws any interceptions because if he knows a certain play call is being called, he knows that there's a good chance that receiver is probably getting open once he turns his back to the defense and turns back around on those play actions. And on his shotgun type of plays, he does take a lot of he makes probably like a 2-read situation where he has his main guy and then he has his backup guy. And he's been doing a good decision, like staying like on schedule to get it to his either his backup when his main guy isn't there and getting the ball out so that way, when the pass rush gets neutralized, it's because you're getting rid of the ball quick. So he's able to do that. So I have to give him credit with his legs. Like he has had a tremendous year with that after he's gotten a surgery. I'll have to give him his credit with that. I've had to give him his credit with his turnovers. He's kept them very low, almost no fumbles. It was scary that he took that hit like he did and didn't fumble the ball or wasn't carted off the game. That right there needs to be fixed first and foremost. That right there should not happen again. That's ridiculous that a free runner came, 2 free runners came in on Kyler Murray that on that play. That's ridiculous. That needs to be fixed. But also him being decisive and making sure that he doesn't have to force the ball. So I'll give you kudos for that. Thank you for getting better in those areas. Thank you for taking this offense serious. And aside from some things that I still have problems with him, they're usually just off the field type of stuff. He has been playing really well this year, and just him getting more consistent. It looks like he's playing his best football in November and not necessarily in September and October. If he keeps going this way, they're going to make the playoffs if he keeps playing this way.
Yeah, the Cardinals being able to go into the month of December having meaningful football games is huge. I think something that we can also talk a bit about as far as entering the season, we all had said Cardinals run game, it's having issues. Like when teams are stopping the Cardinals from running the ball, the offense would then have to take over. We would then see there would be issues with the pass protections. You'd also be able to find just times, at least, where, like you were mentioning, with free rushers going to Kyler Murray, a lot of the protections and other things that we've seen have come to having more of these 13 personnel looks and being able to have new ways of running the football out of it. So this is just, we'll do a quick offensive study on this play before we'll take a look at least at some of the other stuff that we've seen as far as from a play design perspective. But this is really fun because you get to see Hjalti Froholt, who people are saying that he's maybe having one of the best seasons that we've seen from him. He's been able to play extremely well on film. He's probably not going to end up getting those nods over some of the bigger names, but he's at least making a name for himself. This is just a quick 13 personnel look where they're running a counter look. You can see at least where the Bears are just showing a bare front up front with 5 guys. They've got two linebackers. This is an 8 in the box look. So you're talking about you're going to run an 8 in the box look against these guys for the most part. You're going to assume this is where the defense usually has an advantage because you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys here. Unless the quarterback's going to turn into a blocker, you're going to have yourself be essentially outmatched. What Arizona does on this play is they essentially run a counter where they're able to bring the tight end back over. Their defensive end is blocked by Trey McBride. They're at least able to get that push, and then you can see as far as with being able to read the misdirection, I think it's Tremaine Edmonds is reading what they'll have as far as the guard, Evan Brown, coming across the middle here. And so then when he does hit, you can see once you have all of these guys picked up, you've actually got a complete misdirection in the numbers game where all these guys rushing to this side looking for that are now accounted for. They hand the ball off to James Conner, and all of a sudden you've just taken essentially this 8-on-7 matchup, and now you've just turned it into essentially a 1-on-1 matchup, with that one being the tight end here where this
Higgins,
guy's out of place. So what Arizona's been able to do is they can see how to be able to, with where the boxes are standing, you can see Hicks leaning to this side. Arizona's recognizing, hey, we've got a 7-on-7 matchup here. Instead of running the ball over into the strength of where these tight ends are, they pull the tight end over, and suddenly you can see at least that the Bears are completely having one person to be able to beat with Hicks on that tackle and James Conner. He still falls forward, is able to pick up 4 yards because there's so much push ahead of that play. Little things like that set you up then for third down plays where you are able to have just a much easier time in being able to get the ball punched into the picking up those first downs, I should say.
I think this is a shift. No, this is the one that they handed off to Trey McBride. And he took it.
Jet sweep, which normally, like, this is something in the past with Cardinals fans were used to saying, hey, Andy Isabella is the guy you would run on that jet sweep. You want to throw something in that'll really kind of screw teams up, throw Trey McBride in there, because as you can see clearly, they're putting him in coverage expecting he's going to block, he's going to be able to catch. You've got your fullback essentially position lined up over here, like your H-back. James Conner standing over there. This very much looks like a I personnel power run right up the middle. Arizona instead pulls out a little bit of trickery, and look where everyone goes. Every person follows number 84, follows James Conner. The only person at least who's containing on the edges here, and I'm going to trust Trey McBride, who breaks tackles against the safety with that big body at the 265 pounds over being able to take out that safety. This is one of those things where you talk about creative play design while at the same time, you're not just doing a trick play or reinventing the wheel. This is just a jet sweep. The difference, of course, being that it's a jet sweep where the defense is just not accounting for the idea that you're probably going to have at least a good opportunity to get the ball to your best playmakers. They do that, and then the Cardinals are able to score in this regard. This is one of the spots where coming into this game, Marcos, it felt like coaching was one of the biggest things that Arizona had over this Bears team. And I think we really saw that play out on the field, especially when it came to the later situations where you're talking about the Cardinals against the Bears passing game. They really were able to recognize how Caleb Williams was going to hold the ball long. The secondary was able to play well with some of the guys who were there, take advantage of a bad offense. And despite running around and maybe probably could have had 12 sacks in the day if not for Caleb Williams, Cardinals defense was able to be incredibly disciplined and come away with their best pass rushing performance of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I would like to say is they were doing a lot of simulated pressures on defense, and simulated pressures are where they're still rushing for, but they're bringing somebody from a different area, a different location. But I would say that they still up their blitz amount. So this one's a simulated pressure. You literally pulled up the perfect play for me to as I'm talking. So on this one, you see basically Kaiser White kind of lurking, kind of taking a little bit of step. He's trying to time the snap so he can get a full sprint when that ball gets snapped, obviously. So he's kind of lurking in. You're going to see
over here. It looks like you've got some cover 3 being played over the top is what it looks like, I think, as well.
You're always going to see somebody kind of like take a step forward and rush and then back into coverage, just like Zaven Collins did. That's basically like what I call a creeper blitz, or what you call like a simulated pressure, because you're still sending 4, but it looks like a blitz because somebody who's not on the line of scrimmage is going after the quarterback. Obviously, the whole reasoning for that, especially for Zaven Collins taking a step forward, is for him to get his tackle to engage with him, and then he drops into coverage. And he also wants to slide the numbers towards that direction. Let's say they slide it towards Zayvon Collins. Suddenly, that tackle isn't blocking anybody. And then you bring Kaiser White on the opposite side. Your hopes is that you get a 2-on-1 situation like you just did on the outside, except that, Zayvon Collins was picked up. I mean, not Zayvon Collins. Kaiser White was picked up by the tackle. So that means that the defensive end had to take a longer loop, which, I mean, it's not their fault, but it kind of rushes him. See how he had to step in? He had to step in to avoid that, that pressure by, I believe that's, I forgot what his name 43 is.
Lucetta. And this is
Lucetta.
This is a unique pressure also, like you said, because the Bears have had issues with their offensive line this year. They've got like fourth string left tackle starting, backup guards. They really, at least in this spot, you can at least see with how the Cardinals simulated that pressure. They have an unblocked edge rusher because on this side, they've overloaded that one side of the field. This is a spot where if you're an offensive coordinator, you need to have a hot route put in because as soon as they rush, both of those guys run toward Cole Kmet. You can at least see on the previous play where this is a spot where you just need to see that the blitz is coming from. Caleb needs to be able to step up, throw into the blitz, even if he has to step up into the pocket. He just is not.
Yeah, he has number 2 open.
Yeah, he doesn't even have number 2 open. 2 isn't even looking.
Oh,
back.
no, not really.
He's clearing out some of the different routes. This looks like this is a concept where when you can see the guy who at least would be open on the other side of the field, it's not what the play is designed that he's reading. He's looking over to the right. Now remember, this is a trips right play that we said on the previous one. So he's looking at least for those 3 guys going to run through, go their different directions, then see who's open. Because there ends up being a free rusher in here, my guess is this is the lack of a hot route where you got to have pre-snap recognition to say, hey, look, there's a blitzer that's coming from here. You got to be able to make an adjustment, throw into the blitz. Something even as simple as just checking the ball down over the head of Lucetta to a DeAndre Swift would be something that can work. Cardinals, however, get enough pressure on the outside that Williams, he just steps up and then makes a great play with his legs, running away, throwing backwards across his body, finding the open man. There's 2 guys in that area, and you can at least see that on this play. The guy who's in coverage down over here, I believe, is 21. Is that Williams? Yes. So this is going to be
that's Williams. Yeah.
He's having to basically play his own coverage where he's covering the running back to make sure that he's going down, which means that Roma Dunze finds the soft spot within the zone. This is where I think that you can see potential for Chicago's offense as far as some of these plays. There's areas that I think are very similar to Kyler's first year with Cliff, especially when they struggled against like the Carolina game, some of the different areas as far as reading coverage. What really happened in this game was that Nick Rallis just was able to fire up different blitzes, different looks, and they were able to get all sorts of pressure on Caleb Williams, and the Bears on their side had nowhere to go. Look at the corners in this spot here. You're at least seeing that they've got a extra guy in, at least with the 5 linemen. They've got an extra guy in Cole Kmet to protect, plus the running back. Essentially, this is not a max protect where it's 2-man route, but this is essentially going to be releasing those 3 guys, like 6-man. I think it's going to be a 6-man protection, 7th man picking up the blitz. Cardinals blitz these guys here. Look at what the route concepts are, at least for the most part, with this blitz getting picked up. Like, they stayed neck and neck with them. You've got Sterling Thomas basically staying right here with DJ Moore. You've got the coverage over the top. You can see that Roma Dunze's here. The design, at least, that they have for this play, it's almost like it's a verts play. Now, you're looking at here, and who's the guy who's the deep guy who's going to be open, taking the top off the defense? Who's the guy that you should probably throw it to in this play, Marcos? Probably Keenan
I think
Allen
it would
right
jet.
here.
Yeah, but Keenan Allen's not a speedster.
He's not
but
a
of course
speedster.
Yeah, but of course they go ahead and this is something that, okay, I'm not going to name any names, but somebody said Shane Waldron was doing better job than our Drew Petting, mostly because they were frustrated. No, Shane Waldron it's almost been known that like he was a horrible pick for offensive coordinator for the first year of a developing quarterback. But he puts these people in these situations all the time. He'll put like Keenan Allen on the deep route, either inside the, on the slot, running an outside post where it's like, what are you doing with him? He's not a speedster. He's a handsy guy.
This is a 3rd and 13 type of play. And
when
you're talking about how you're going to be able to get that far for the most part, like, again, there's areas that we've seen. This is something that I think we'd complained about with the Cardinals for a bit. If you put a Marvin Harrison Jr. into one of these types of plays, you got Keenan Allen. These guys are all running these deep straight routes for the most part. You got this max protection in. You eventually get Keenan open potentially over the top, but with how the safeties are structured with everything, you're going to really be trying to look over here for someone like Moore. The Cardinals corners have played at a very high level. That's something I think we have to be able to say, that this is Roma Dunze is pretty well covered. This is really one of those plays where you look at that and say, yeah, they have to get to this yard line for the most part. But if you're going to say, hey, I can pick up 11 downs on 3rd and 13, knowing, hey, if I can pick that up, even if I run here, do a comeback route on the timing, even if I'm 2 yards short, I'm close enough that if I need to kick it, or I could try to punt and pin them down deep. Heck, I could even say I've got a mobile quarterback into Caleb Williams. Let's see if we can go for it on 4th and short, be able to get that. Instead, it just felt like this is part of what got him fired, I think, in a lot of different ways, is the inability to be able to adapt and the lack, at least, of crossing routes, of running routes. It just feels like this is one of those plays of where you're running forwards in hard mode and you're kind of expecting your quarterback to carry you. Meanwhile, Arizona ends up having 2 guys who are here to make sure he can't run for the first down. And
Yeah, they
Cardinals,
shut the
against
door
the
on
bad
him.
offensive linemen, still get pressure. You end up with a sack that takes him down. This is one of those places of where, not to be able to put Morales down, I think it's perfect that he was able to demonstrate here when you got him the cornerbacks that were good enough to be able to stay in coverage with guys in some of these plays. When you're able to blitz guys to be able to stop some of the run, you're able to now blitz guys at different spots to get pressure on the quarterback. It's that manufactured pressure that we were able to see the Cardinals do with the likes of Todd Bowles back in 2014. Remember, back in 2014, 2015, Cardinals didn't have a Chandler Jones. They had a Darnell Dockett. They had a Calais Campbell, but they were really getting pressure with blitzing the Honey Badger, with having some of these corner blitzes. Even with Vance Joseph being able to have Byron Murphy and some of these simulated pressures, you can get pressure on a quarterback being able to, if you've got a smart defensive coordinator, but having to have the caliber of cornerback that you can see downfield, it makes me think Cardinals didn't have that guy last year, Marcos. They didn't have those bodies. We saw it a little bit late when Garrett Williams came back. But when you're talking about this as being almost like a coverage sack, this is a sack that gets pressure. It's not quite a coverage sack, but really there's no one open downfield. You're able just to clean up the play. This is part of where you can talk about what is good defensive play and what is going to be, on the other side, poor offensive play, and being able to take advantage of bad offenses. This is just a pretty easy pressure, at least on Caleb Williams, that he just is able to get out of and be able to throw the ball away past the line. Like, they could have had, again, like we said, 6 more sacks on the day just from some of these different blitz looks. Caleb himself is kind of having to, unfortunately, do it all, and that's been something that we have seen when you have a situation that you're dropping a quarterback into, especially a rookie that's going to be this difficult. Like, here you've got what seems to be just a simple 5-man blitz. You've got 5 guys. The offensive line is not having to be able to protect because you're blitzing Mac Brown off of the edge. Buda Baker gets a free rush. There's not really a guy that's open here for the most part. Look at how bad both of these quick turnaround routes are when all of a sudden you just have to try to get open. It reminds me a little bit of some of the complaints I had with the Cardinals in 2022's offense with Kyler Murray, where we saw they really just were not having some of these different play calls that were giving the quarterback a better shot. And he was having to make a lot of stuff happen with his legs. That's something that I think as Cardinals fans we can say, being able to move past some of these quarterback dependent plays, being able to give the quarterback an opportunity to succeed, is something that's really been a step forward for this franchise.
Yeah, well, that's another thing that we can talk about with Shane Waldron not supporting his rookie as much. And a lot of those circumstances, when you know that it could be a simulated pressure or there could be a possibility that they're going to bring more bodies than you can block, you have to do a side adjust. You have to look over both sides of your offensive line, but look over to your wide receivers and give them a signal and tell them, like, one of you guys has to side adjust on this one because I might not be able to hold the ball long enough. Obviously, you don't see that with Caleb Williams because this is his first year in the league. He's trying to take in the offense and he's trying to learn these things about like NFL coverages that he's going to learn throughout the day. Shane Waldron's supposed to be there to tell him, okay, on this play, call this play, side adjust this play afterwards. If you see this indicator, go ahead and side adjust to that. Go ahead and change the play on that one. Caleb Williams is a rookie, so he's not getting that support because he's still picking up what defenses are looking like. So with that being said, when that happens, like in your rookies out there having to take off because that's what they did during college, you're not doing yourself a good job as an offensive coordinator. So we're like,
that's why he's
Drew
out of a job
Petzing's
right
like,
now, Marcos.
Yep, Drew Petzing's like, obviously Drew Petzing still has a job and Shane Waldron doesn't, but also the Cardinals are handling this the cohesiveness between the line. It's mostly just Kyler Murray talking to what is it? Yalde Froholt and giving that communication. Yalde Froholt is his job is to point out the mic every single play. So when they do that, they look back to each other and they go ahead and pick up what they need to pick up or change what they need to pick up, what they need to change, and then they're able to execute.
Yeah, and this is one of those plays where when we're talking about, not just pressure on the quarterback, we talk, hey, run more bootlegs, run more under center. That's what the Bears do. But when you can look at how disciplined defense is able to work, good defensive play calls can beat good offensive play calls, and it still takes talent to be able to get there. One of the things that we can see here with this play, for example, is they have the bootleg fake. You can see Arizona's got their bodies coming down. What happens immediately after that? Well, Caleb at least is in a spot where he's now on the bootleg. Cole Kmet has to shed Dante Stills and be able to find something to get open. This is part of where there's good discipline from Stills. Remember, in years past with Vance Joseph, we talked, they would get faked out by the bootleg. They would sometimes respect the run game. Here you can see Stills has a combination, at least, of being able to have the quick recognition that's there. You can see Kaiser White runs to his spot for the most part, so they have their assignments down. They're not necessarily blowing that. But look at what happens here. He gets into the passing lane. You have that athleticism that we had talked about that should have gone earlier than the 7th round. He now has gotten in the way of Caleb Williams, and this is a play that's designed as far as with I think it's like basically 3 over routes. You've got one guy trying to take up Williams. You've got Kmet trying to be the underneath route, and then the play is designed to be an end zone shot over here to Rome Odunze off of that bootleg, getting Caleb on the run. Watch what Jalen Thompson does, because you don't even see him in the picture, and then watch what happens. He immediately goes and closes the gap, keeps his eyes downfield, and is able to essentially take away that play. So you've got, boom, right here. Caleb has not got the sight line to be able to get the ball to Cole Kmet. He's looking for Odunze. He still is not able to get there. He finally is able to turn the corner, and Jalen Thompson's right there in his pocket. This is one of those places, at least, when we talk about how you're able to move as far as your athleticism and how angles end up being incredibly important. This is like a game, at least, where there's just a few feet or so of difference between this being a Rome Odunze touchdown and being able to have Caleb Williams being able to take off around Dante Stills, pick up a whole bunch of yards, maybe get them into a closer spot, and being like what we see here is a throwaway play where he just has to throw it out of bounds, because otherwise Jalen Thompson, if he throws it back, steps in front of that ball, that's a pick. Bears had to settle for a field goal. This next play is one that at least shows a little bit more of how you can, at least as a offense, show a little bit more trickery. We've seen similar things like this before. We've seen like Trey McBride running back around. They use Keenan Allen kind of in that spot. Cardinals are able to get pressure here with 4. So you can see here Roy Lopez just splits past the offensive lineman number 76. The 65 snaps it. He just pushes him back and sheds. They're trying to set up a screen here to number 4. And Arizona, at least with recognizing the screen, look at how that is played off of the edge right here by Zaven Collins. He immediately recognizes the screen. They see that they're getting guys out front. He then gets in the way. All you got to do is get in the way of DeAndre Swift. And Caleb just has to throw it at the feet of the guy that's there. One of those plays we've talked about was Zaven
Runs
Collins.
him over.
Is he going to step up as that guy who can be that top tier pass rusher? And through the first few years of his career, we can say he has not. But in his ability as far as his coverage instincts and his ability as a run defender to be able to shed blocks, this is a great example of what you want from a defensive end / outside linebacker in Zaven Collins to hold the edge. He goes and is able to get upfield, and then he immediately is able to sees the screen, steps back inside, is able to get off, stays with the running back. This play is just instantly dead. When you've got a play that gets blown up like this, you can really see, at least, that when the Cardinals get to that spot, right there, 63, he just sheds, pulls him down, goes for it. You really need to be able to sell these guys on this being able to have the run. The screen instead gets set up. You already have it kind of going to be blown dead where you're trying to see someone spying over here. You got extra bodies. This is one of those plays in which the way that screen is supposed to probably work, you're hoping that Keenan Allen's going to pull a guy this way. If you're playing man coverage, someone's going to go with Keenan. You probably get the opportunity at least to have an extra body like over here at 55 is going to be having to kind of slide down a bit. You maybe get that screen off. This ends up being a spot where the Cardinals stay disciplined, are able to still get that pressure with 4. And you get pressure on a screen pass. That just ends up showing how essentially they did not respect this at all for the most part, because Keenan Allen in this place right here, obviously, He's pretty wide open, but he's not even going to be intended on this. This is a screen pass all the way. This just kind of shows at least that the intentionality behind trying to pull that guy down, you got to be able to recognize this is zone coverage. We can't just continue to run this pass play for the most part. If we are going to run it, we want to make sure that that pre-snap recognition is going to be able to bait guys into stuff further, be able to get a little bit more going so that you'll be able to get that screen executed. And you're trying to kind of run that screen to get these pass rushers off of Caleb Williams. Bears are just in such a rough place for the most part that Arizona is able to get that pressure with 4, and Caleb Williams just has to throw it at their feet. We also were able to see, I think, on this next play, just real quick, Marcos, bringing in a guy again, pulling him back out. Cardinals are able to recognize and pick up some of that zone coverage. They just rush 4. Caleb's got a decent pocket to step into. There's nobody here that's open, at least for the most part. Even with down here on the sideline, you can see between him and Buda Baker, he just takes the check down to get a few yards. You're in a place, at least, where the hope that you would have for a play like this is be able just to kind of pick up some yards, get some pressure off of your quarterback. The fact that they're able to move him off of his spot and he checks it down is something where you're going to want to be able to say, at least moving forward, if you're the Bears, you're going to have to do a bit better job in your interior offensive line. Caleb's going to have to give a little bit more time. And you see with how these plays are set up, instead of going for the deep pass where you've got the coverage here is decent, but you can see how he'll be able to pull away a little bit. They just end up taking a couple of yards. They end up getting the first down play. It ends up being one of those spots where you're like, yeah, this is something that we've been able to see teams be able to adjust with some of these short passing games, take advantage of some of these spots. But the Bears, essentially, this was like the only play they really could get was just through these short, quick check down passes. They were not able to punch it in when the field shrunk, and they had to defend less of the field in the red zone. You see Caleb goes through the protections, hits this guy. I think in the future, Marcos, we're not going to see the same Caleb Williams struggle against the Cardinals like we saw today. There's a lot that you can see of going through the reads, making the decisions. What I do think we can say right now is the situation that he's been in and the situation Kyler Murray's been in showed you're probably talking about the Cardinals, by building that culture, by building some of that talent, have really showcased why they're starting to make this turnaround after just 2 years, despite the lack of talent and the lack of bodies that we've seen be able to be star players on this defense.
Yeah, just for the record, I also was against wanting to draft Caleb Williams because of everything that he brought with him as well. And I rather would work with the quarterback that we have now to be able to see what we can do in this new offense and to try to just burn it to the ground and start all over. So once again, when you see all these things about like him not being able to pick up these defenses, an offensive coordinator who can't install anything so that he can change things up. Cardinals pretty much had their way when it came to those pressures and being able to like kind of throw whatever they wanted and whatever look they could throw. And it was just going to spook the rookie. And it's kind of like, 101 about like football when it comes to like facing rookies. Usually defensive coordinators get very aggressive against rookies because they know that they're still learning the ropes. Yeah. They did that to Kyler Murray, and I remember the first instance where they unapologetically did it was in that game against the Los Angeles Raiders, Kyler Murray's second preseason game. And even though it was preseason, he just kept throwing blitzes towards him and stuff. He wanted to teach him like this is the NFL and whatnot. So when the season progressed, Kyler Murray had to learn that as well. Kyler Murray had to learn what looks he was getting, what he needed to do during these looks. And, with his ability to be able to escape the pocket, that did help out, like at least mediating, like if nothing was open, he could just take off. But now, like, I'm not really seeing that. I'm seeing him understanding the looks.
Playing from the pocket is one of the biggest things, I think. And part of what goes into that, I think, as well, we'll go on this with covering the Bears before we move on to Kyler's amazing pass game against the Jets, is going to be we've seen progress, not just from Kyler Murray and the Cardinals' run game with James Conner. We've seen progress with how their run game is able to help other backs, and Trey Benson being able to step up with improving in some of the vision and tougher runs has been part of that. Against the Bears, when it came to running the football, it ended up being a huge day ultimately for Trey Benson. James Conner ended up with the majority of the rushing yards at 107 rushing yards, but when you're talking about the actual box score for rushing, He had 8 carries for 37 yards. Amari DiMercado, of course, only got a few carries. There's one that we'll talk about here in a second. But look at this run here from Trey Benson. You're talking at least about Cardinals are able to have just kind of a typical, I think this is going to be like almost 11 personnel look at least, where you've got just 5 offensive linemen, the couple wide receivers, and then Dortch in there. You can see they bring Greg Dortch across, and when they hand the ball in here, essentially, this is one where Benson just kind of sheds a few tackles, gets upfield, gets a couple of yards. This is one of the things that we saw where there was hesitation, not necessarily trusting his blocks. Here you're able to see, almost said Bartolo. No, Tristan Colon, at least here for the most part on this play. He's pushing his guy out of bounds. They end up having a nice shed, but you're able to at least see that he's just able to kind of put his shoulder down, get some big, hard yards. And that brings us up to this play. Now you've got at least the Cardinals setting up for what looks like to be kind of a little bit more of a passing situation with a tight end on that side against 4 down linemen. You got 4 back here, and what's clearly going to be kind of what seems like a run down front. Cardinals end up just running like a pretty simple inside zone play here for the most part. So you're talking about when they do launch, kind of get off the ball, Froholt kind of hits, you end up pushing upfield. You've got another guy looking for a downfield block. You end up with a good block right up here, at least from the likes of your right tackle, Kelvin Beachum. And what ends up being nice about this here is this is an inside zone play. We've seen the Cardinals saw this with Todd Gurley all the time. This is something that Benson was able to run in college, and he really shows some of that explosiveness here and decisiveness. So watch, he basically is running up the middle. He notices that he's got guys heading right here where he's got his 2 blockers. This guy's getting blocked into the play. He ends up just kind of cutting it back upfield and is able to split those safeties in the middle of the field for a 17-yard gain. This is one of those areas where all of a sudden you're talking about an explosive rushing play from someone who's not James Conner, being able to have these type of plays while Connor's on the sideline, being able to keep him healthier and fresher, maybe not miss a couple of games during the season, and not having a drop-off like we were able to see sometimes with the Cardinals. He gets a huge bunch of open space right here. They don't even call, the hands to the face in this spot against Beachum, but he's able to make a quick decision to be able to just cut it back and then explodes through to be able to pick up a bunch more yards. This is part of where we're saying with the Cardinals of how ultimately this is where their identity is still going to be in running the football. And this leads up to, at least I would say, the next play, at least for the most part, that we'll look at, of course, is that Trey Benson touchdown. So here you got Trey Benson here lined up at least in the red zone. You've got it at the 1-yard line. Cardinals at least essentially are able to say, I think this ends up being more of a 13 personnel look. One of their things we've said has been huge for them in the run game of getting essentially an extra body. They start off with 1 tight end on the left, 2 on the right. They eventually bring it back where all of a sudden you've got 3 guys blocking on the outside. The Bears do not have any adjustments for that whatsoever. Suddenly you're able to have a bit of space that's been created. You can see at least with how Cologne is basically pulling to the outside. You've got one of the guys blocking down inside. Benson just follows his blocker, and he ends up getting into the end zone. It is one of those nice, clean, simple plays to pick up a couple of yards, ends up with his, I believe it's either first or second NFL touchdown. You can just see how this pre-snap movement, the Bears are just essentially not prepared whatsoever for it. It's not just a great play call. You can at least see that they're looking where this is one of those plays where they're having to defend Kyler Murray running the ball with Kevin Byard on this side. But all you really do is you pull your offensive lineman, your right guard over to that left side. He just follows him in, lowers the shoulder pads, and gets in. That would have been probably the best play of the game, ultimately, for the run game, if it were not for this, Marcos. This is the big play that we can talk about that basically iced it for the Cardinals.
I think it's kind of having a little bit of at least on my end, it's not either he's running so fast that it's buffering on my end, or he's just. But yes, this is the play right before the half where he is running. Because I can't pick it up. So he's running kind of like a not more so an outside zone on this play and stuff, but he does push it to the outside. I think this is intended to go right with the middle, so it might be like an inside zone type of look given to him on the opposite side of the field. He's following his pulling blockers, which is the tight end, and it looks like what's that? Yeah, that's the guard. The guard and the tight end is pulling.
Yep, and it looks like
So
you got Froholt is pulling over as well. It looks like this is one of those plays of where it probably is going to be a little bit more of an outside zone type of play. But when you're running zone and you can cut it back up the middle, you see how when they're looking at it, the defense recognizes the outside zone. But it's 3rd and 5. You've got a couple of guys blocking downfield. You're creating some space. Your hope is to be able, I think you can use that last timeout for the most part if you need to get another play into the sideline. The biggest thing
this looks like this looks like a GC lead. Yeah. Actually, because he's following his blockers, pulling from the opposite side.
At least. And then he just cuts it upfield because you got the 2 blockers there. Where the Bears really kind of blow this, for the most part at least, is the only guy who's there to really make a tackle just gets outrun. This is just Amari DiMercato just showing off speed. Tremaine Edmonds, I believe at least, does not shed or get off of that block. So this is one of those plays of where you're like, effort ends up being a huge factor on defense. So watch Edmonds here. He's reading the play. He's going out in coverage. And he just doesn't really shed the block. He ends up getting kind of pushed back in. But DiMercato just essentially accelerates. And then Greg Dortch, he's able to get just enough in the way to be able to kind of free him, where you can just see the bad angle that gets taken down over here by Bayard. No one was expecting them to have the Amari DiMercato show that explosion or that speed. He just ends up beating them to the corner. Cardinals go up 21-9. It was basically game over at that point.
That closed it.
The Bears could not move the ball. Ended the half just in utter collapse for the most part. If Chicago tackles him, the Cardinals have to burn a timeout, and then they're not even having any issues. Wide open in the middle of the field. Clearly, they were playing their coverage out, expecting that Arizona is just going to probably have one of these plays that they're going to throw to the offensive guys. Look at how there's no one up over here in the middle of the field. Great play. This is when we talk about a great play call beats good coverage. This is not good coverage when you're talking about the Cardinals could run the ball here. They do, and all of a sudden you just get a couple of blocks, a guy misses a tackle, and DiMercato with that speed is off to the races. Cardinals having this many amount of weapons at the running back spot, I think, does show that running backs can be found in many different places. You can pay a guy like a James Conner, you can draft a Trey Benson, you can bring in an undrafted free agent like Amari DiMercato. This is another one of those James Conner runs where he would have housed it. You can at least see, once you can kind of put the hat on a hat, running the ball aggressively downfield, this is where the Bears have to show some fight to be able to essentially get through. You can see how right now you've got guys having to fight through their blocks. You've got some of these players are trying to get upfield. And what it comes down to it is just they're able to cut back for the most part, and Bears are just able to kind of get gashed because the Cardinals, they're just running all of this with their tight ends, with this 13 personnel. They just don't have an answer for it. There's just so much space you're able to give a hard runner like James Conner. Bears really, at the end of the day, they're a defensively led team, and maybe this is the comparison I can give. The Cardinals had kept Steve Wilks and tried to invest somewhat on the defensive line, but at the end of the day, we're not able to essentially get things going on offense. And on the defensive side, you can just kind of see when your defensive linemen are struggling against some of these open gaps and you have to make adjustments. They just have not been able to do that under Matt Eberflus. And that's part of where I think, Marcos, with this run game moving forward for the Cardinals, we're going to see, I think at least, some more huge games from Arizona coming on the line. Now, I do think we have enough time to be able to move at least into wrapping. I think it's not wrapping up, but let's talk a bit about the next game, which is Cardinals 31, New York Jets 6. A huge game for the defense, holding the Aaron Rodgers and the Packers to about 150 yards passing, holding them on rushing to under 80 yards rushing on the day. Arizona's offense went off, and where that really ended up starting ultimately was with Kyler Murray having 2 incompletions to open the game, followed by essentially a perfect day. He had 2 incompletions the entire day, finished the rest of that on I think it was 17 passes in a row streak. This is one of those spots where Kyler essentially looked elite, putting up that classic Aaron Rodgers type game against kind of the old version of Aaron Rodgers himself, who's on the other side of the line. What were some of your thoughts, at least, about the Cardinals doing this at home against a Jets team who some people had picked them to lose against this Jets team, and instead we're talking about Kyler being back in the MVP race?
Yeah, he was getting he was getting a lot of MVP talk, but he also got what I think a lot of people should check out when it comes to when it just comes to wanting to get more nuance on the offense and whatnot. The QB School went ahead and released a video on him. That's obviously JT O'Sullivan. He does a lot of good stuff. He's basically just like another Kurt Warner in a way, because he does a lot of breakdowns.
Breaks down. Yep.
Yeah. NFL quarterback, knows the offense, knows like what like these people look for and whatnot. So he went ahead and put out a film school on it. I would recommend that you guys check it out. It's a obviously one of the things that I love to like be able to see and be able to like review and stuff, because a lot of times you don't get the nuance when it comes to like these type of plays and everything like that. And we know that once Kurt Warner put that film out there, that video, it was against the Chargers and whatnot, to be able to break down more of the nuance of the game. People's notions were starting to change, and people were starting to see it as a like, look, this is not just one person who's causing the problem. One of the things that I love that he called and he said is like, this concept is ran by entire league. This is what you do to attack this side of the field. And when you look at this coverage, and for instance, like, don't just always automatically assume that like on the broadcast view, if you see Kyler Murray tucking in and running with the ball, that nobody was open. So that's what I liked. And he said, but he got a lot of flowers. And if you guys are obviously Kyler Murray fans, check it out, because he does break down a lot of good plays. One of the plays that I love that he broke down was the downfield. It was an under center play action game. And it was the play that we're trying to run against the Los Angeles Rams, where they were trying to get Trey McBride the ball. He did like a little bit of like a Y sneak on that look. Kyler Murray has to just throw it up in the air because he had pressure in his face. He just had to throw it up in the air, and they got like a 37-yard completion off of it because of how wide open Trey McBride was. And he was talking about like there was some brilliance being shown in the past game where he was actually getting people wide open, and Kyler Murray was delivering on those. So he was paying those looks off. He was also, oh my God, there's some passes he was able to like not only sneak, but he was able to get through. There was one that was a crazy, I don't know if you'll be able to find it. Like I think it's a Trey McBride completion where Kyler Murray had to like put some sauce behind it. He just turns his hips.
Yep, he had to turn it, throw it hard, be able to hit it, and he also had to put it in a spot where the tight end McBride was the only one to be able to get it, so no one can make a play on it.
This
is like
boom.
Some play design stuff that we've talked about, where you're not able just to get Murray in motion, but this is clearly a screen from the whole design. Look at where the Jets flow for the most part. So this is something that's very similar to like a tight end leak play, but you do it with James Conner. Mix it up a little bit. You got your two running backfield, but it's Greg Dortch with his speed being the other guy back there. So essentially, this is a rushing type of play, but you can run this out of your typical like 11 personnel look, because you're going to have your offensive lineman here and Trey McBride. So this is essentially like a pass down concept you're now able to use as a run play. Watch where the eyes of the defenses go. They flow as he goes down over there with Greg Dortch. James Conner just ends up being there all the way. You've got your lineman coming down, and he's just able to use a little bit of touch, put it right where it needs to be, and it just puts him all the way down rumbling. James Conner essentially steps out right about here at the one. They're able to then kind of punch it in as far as with the next play. But this is like when we're talking about not just using creative play design or getting guys open, it's also about execution being one of the biggest things. And you can see here, there's a lot of bodies moving around. You can see how everything seems to flow to this side, like Kyler Murray is going to be bootlegging with James Conner as an option. Instead, they've designed a screen all the way to throw it back. Grid block there from Froholt blocks the one guy who can make the tackle out of the picture. And then James Conner is able to use that contact balance to do the rest, all the way to the 1 yard line, unfortunately. And this is a place, at least, where when we're talking about Cardinals being able to have like that Swiss Army knife of multiple ways to be able to deal with teams, this is part of it. Kyler also has very much being able to be decisive and accurate on the day. You're able to see here, Cardinals offensive line, he gets a little bit of pressure in front of him. Having one of these top guys, I believe this is going to be number 95, Quinnen Williams. He's one of those like all-pro type defensive linemen. He's able to read the flow of the play, sees Kyler's got the ball, is able to get pressure. Murray at least is able to put it right on the outside shoulder against Sauce Gardner, be able to pick up some yards. This is just a clinic that he was able to put on of being able to deliver the football accurately, and also guys being able to get open while the Jets were essentially just basically forced into playing some of these different coverage zone looks all day. Kyler was able just to make them pay with the lack, at least, of blitzing that the Jets did. Most of these guys were picked up. So the Jets were playing guys back in coverage, rushing 4, and Kyler just picked them apart. The fact they weren't able to get pressure without blitzing, and when they did blitz, Kyler was able to make them pay, or they had a screen drawn up. This is just a coaching clinic where the Cardinals, I think, were the second week in a row, their coaching staff outcoached the the other coaches on the opposing sideline. And we even got to see Kyler be able to have in some of this regard. There's the seam route that you were talking about, I believe, Marcos, where you've got kind of everyone spread out. You're running kind of that verge play. You can see here with how the coverage is set up. McBride's able to turn inside, has that leverage for the most part. Murray's got to put it in between 4 different bodies here. He's reading both of those different options. He sees that he can just hit McBride in stride. That is a tough throw to be able to make, because if you throw that over McBride's
That's
head,
a throw.
the safety is the one who can then dive for the interception. You throw it too short for the most part like that, where someone's got the ability to play. You throw it at least to the outside shoulder, you lead him into a hospital ball. He throws that ball exactly where it needs to be. That's the precision passing that we saw with him coming out of Oklahoma, and that's the precision passing that we're now seeing in the NFL in 2024.
Watch, you'll see it right here in the end zone angle. That was the throw right there. I wish I showed the other angle behind him, but it was like, look at where the passing lane is, and look at his hips, and look at how he like kind of like whips himself. Boom.
Yeah.
It's just like, sorry,
Good
it was a full body
good
throw.
mechanics. Yeah, it was.
It was in between 3 defenders. Yeah, well, I mean, quote unquote. I mean, no pun intended. He threw that with some sauce. We have our sauce on our own. It's just on offense and whatnot. So it's the mechanics behind it that just makes it look so good. Because, like I said, he puts his full body. He knows he has to fit it through a tight window. It has to get there like right away. So he threw that on a rope, and that's the pass that I was intending. We have to also show that big play.
Yeah,
we have to show that big play by Trey McBride.
Yeah, we will. This is the only other incompletion that Kyler had on the day, and arguably this should have been a completion. When you look at this one, I think it was just a little small bit too much from Murray, and then a little bit late from McBride, so it was both of those guys together. He just does a quick shot for the RPO. You can see he hits him both in the hands. This is a play that probably would have been a touchdown, and you can just say this is part of how Arizona was. They just were able to take whatever they wanted from the Jets, essentially, throughout the whole day. And it's unfortunate that we don't get to see as much there, but he just puts it a little bit high, maybe slightly lower. It's there, but again, he completed 22 of his 20. I want to say it's 22 of his 24 passes,
17 in a row,
yards, threw a touchdown, finished with 17 in a row. I will say at least he broke Carson Palmer's record as well, and had 2 rushing touchdowns on the day. This being one of where the Jets just being able to show as far as the discipline with their defense. You got James Conner up the middle. Everyone's expecting that he's going to get the handoff. You've got guys running right. This is one of those areas when you're talking about coaching. Number 35 here, he sees Ryman moving over. I think that this is probably, if I'm going to have to guess, this is probably a form of almost of man coverage, because he sees Ryman pick up and move. He moves over there out of the way. They move Ryman, and essentially there's nobody here on this side guarding Kyler Murray. They both follow up inside. There is not a soul nearby him. He just can walk his way into the end zone for the most part. Ends up being offsides on the Jets, so it's not a actual flag in Arizona there. It's one of those places of where when we talk about good teams are able to run the score up on bad teams, it's something as simple as being able to say, hey, we're just going to move this guy over here. As soon as Kyler sees that, he's able to snap the ball, goes to James Conner. He's like, oh, I'm keeping it all the way, man. You just moved across to the other side of the field. Great recognition from there. And then you can see the athleticism and speed. Like, you can see McBride blocking here. Didn't even need to really block necessarily. Kyler's just able to take it in for the score. Cardinals just kept pushing points up onto the board where it felt like it was over in the first half, essentially. Cardinals then came out. The defense held the Jets out of the end zone in the second half. But a lot of this is all off of play action fakes for the most part, at least, where Kyler was just able to get quick completions, was able to take time. And he won the NFC Offensive Player of the Week award, his 6th in his career. He's won more Player of the Week awards now than Kurt Warner, than Chandler Jones, than Patrick Peterson. Those guys won 5 apiece. This is Kyler's 6th. We're starting to see him become that star. He completed 85% of his passes and 2 rushing touchdowns in a game. This is his 11th game of a passer rating at least of 120 or greater. We're starting to see at least Kyler Murray be able to come up and being a star in terms of just some of these different plays that he's making on the field. He's not having it be very hard. The offense is now flourishing. They're able to recognize, hey, instead of Marvin Harrison Jr. being lined up out over here in the X spot, let's move him up over here into the slot. You've got Trey McBride on the outside covering the 2 different types of coverage. What do you do on this play? I'm going to run either Marv or Trey straight up the field, flare the other one out just to pick up a couple of quick yards on that play. That's exactly what they do here. They just run that places on the outside shoulder. You pick up 4 yards on first down. Simple, quick, and easy completions like that for a quarterback. that's one of those things, at least, that when we've talked about being able to put your quarterback in a position to succeed, making the use of Marvin Harrison Jr. as a playmaker, seeing the attention that they pay to Trey McBride, it really does feel like it's starting to come together for this Cardinals offense in the run game against Chicago and the passing game against the Jets.
Yeah, exactly. And that concept, not sure if that will smash to the outside, but that's just supposed to be like something that's supposed to stretch the corner who's there it is right there. I just gotta
Yep.
let's watch this play. This is a beautiful play.
This is a mesh concept play, which we haven't seen from Petzing as much. Mesh is just going to essentially play against single coverage. Two guys are running. The spacing has to basically break up single coverage. You're going to be running that so close. These guys should be able to high-five each other. Now, in this spot here, what happens, he sees what's happening with the mesh. He tries to be able to run. McBride, at least, is able to quickly pivot and run around so that he's clearly the guy who's going to be this is designed for. Wilson's clearly blocking. The other two guys are trying to pull everyone away. So the entire design of the play is going to be having defenses stretched this way vertically. You're going to then have guys pulled off. You're going to also have Marvin Harrison Jr., I believe is the guy down here. He's going to be running, at least for that one, being able to pull this defender off to be able to pull Trey McBride open. And you can see here, this is one of those cool plays where you talk about good players making plays. McBride should be down right here on the mesh concept. What do we know about McBride? His yards after the catch, and he does not go down at first tackle like a James Conner. He breaks this tackle on third down, and he just picks up more yards, hurdles a guy, and gets out of bounds. This is one of those areas where you're just kind of like, what can you do as a defense? The Cardinals just basically ran this quick, short play for the most part to pick up a couple of yards, see if they can get some guy open. You play it right, doesn't matter. Trey McBride's able to pick up the first down, uses that athleticism. It shows that the Cardinals in that draft were able to, for the first time in years, recognize if we get a star tight end who's able to make these catches, be able to make big plays, and use up some of those strengths, something we've probably not seen the Cardinals have since, I don't want to say like Jackie Smith, if you want to go back that far, sometime in like the 70s or 80s. That just really shows how that can be a quarterback's best friend, because you're on third down, he just takes the quick play, he even gets hit on the play. Sauce Gardner's there, it doesn't even matter. McBride's able to pick that up, and you're at least watching him kind of enter that superstar category in the NFL, because you're like, all right, you got your Travis Kelce, you've got like a Kyle Pitts. There's probably not a tight end that most any team would have who can block or catch like a Trey McBride, be able to make plays all over the field, who's young and at least has another couple years or so before that second contract kicks in. This is where you're kind of talking about Cardinals fans looking at not just being a team like 2021 that had all of this older talent trying to kind of get that one big ring for the end. You're talking about young talent that's building off of this, winning games, being able to have some of those playmakers making plays. And if you're James Conner, if he ends up leaving to a different team, you've got Trey Benson behind him. If your Buda Baker ends up going, Dadrian Taylor-Demerson got the start in this game, and I believe he still kept his streak of high, I think it was Pro Football Focus ratings going. He had a good play breakup on Devontae Adams, no less. You're talking about a young team on the rise, something that really kind of goes back to that idea of what Monty Austin-Fort and Jonathan Gannon are trying to bring is having to draft, develop, scout out talent, bring guys in through the draft, have a culture of hard playmaking where guys can step up into these different roles, and then being able to deliver. And at the same time, you've got a now veteran quarterback like Kyler Murray, who's still pretty young at 27, able to put up games like this. It does feel like the future is pretty bright in Arizona, Marcos.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's trending in the right direction. I'd have to go ahead and like say that like if they keep going at this direction, it's just going to be one of those circumstances where we're just going to be able to like build on what we have and then be able to add more to it, with the cap space being what it is. And I have to go back to this play because it's so beautiful and I love this play. So on this play, you have like somewhat like a mesh rail going on. So you have Marvin Harrison Jr. moving from one side of the field on the jet sweep, coming to become the number one threat on the outside, because he's, as the number one threat to the very outside. His job is to be able to pull that coverage deep. Now, people will say, okay, well, that means he's just being used to be able to clear out, and that's it. He's not the main target. He's also known as the alert. On this play, the alert is usually a singled out wide receiver that could sometimes get one-on-one coverage. He's probably on the other side of the concept most of the time. But he's also the guy that if you like the matchup as a quarterback and you think your guy can beat the other guy and he can win that one-on-one matchup, that's where he's going to go. That's why he's called the alert. It's just an alert like, oh, I love this matchup outside. This corner's pretty weak. My guy's a speedster, and he could beat this one-on-one. That's where I'm going. But what I love about this concept, too, is that you have basically all the mesh tells. You have 2 wide receivers running shallows to the middle. Obviously, one of them is going to be the pickoff, and the other one's going to be the one getting the ball. You also have an over-the-ball route that's a zone beater that, settles down somewhere around this area. And when these linebackers, like let's just say in zone, if they're not following their people and they sit in their little hook zones, that's where you're going to go to be able to beat that. Obviously, Trey McBride had the wide receiver stepping up to be able to make that tackle, which was Sauce Gardner. And Sauce Gardner, as you can see, he's taking a man on man, even though this is like a zone coverage. And in some instances now, defenses, the modern defenses, you run a combination of both. So he's going to follow his guy because he doesn't want him to get a big completion on this one. He gets it anyway. He does what he needs to do. He sifts through the traffic, makes a tackle. He just can't bring him down. And then, of course, Trey McBride releases, hops over, and the sideline goes absolutely crazy after that. I love that because that camaraderie, seeing people step up and kind of like the culture. Like the culture is like people are just excited. They're pumped up. They just saw their guy just hurdle somebody and get an extra 5 to 10 yards off of that. Look at the coach right here. He's going insane. Look at him. He's getting that's beautiful. The culture, as I love where the culture's trending. We're talking about how good this team is trending. The culture itself is trending to a good direction. And I don't know. I can't say enough about it. It's just, I feel good. I just really hope that it builds from this.
Absolutely. No, one of the things at least also we can talk about being the defensive side of the ball, at least in this game, just was lights out. The Jets lost their starting tackle, Tyron Smith, partway through, but it felt like it was one of those, we're not going to win this game. We're going to have to be able to kind of call it for the most part, at least. So I think it was one of those keeping him healthy, but it did really ultimately feel like the Jets have just not been able to make things right this season, despite everything needing to be in this spot. It's hard to be able to say. So let me show a little bit at least of what we can say for with the Cardinals being able to get some pressure over here, at least against the I almost said the New York Packers, because it's kind of what they are in some way with Davante Adams and some of the other players who are there. This is showing some at least of with the Cardinals being able to get pressure. You can see here that they've got a 4-man look. The offensive line just does not end up picking up who they need. He ends up just checking it down to Breece Hall. Jets are already down by 7 at this point. The Cardinals offense just was going crazy on them, like we were able to see. So the Jets were really going to have to throw the ball to get back into this game. There's one of those places, at least, where with Rodgers, you can see how there's still good plays, good accuracy. He's able to at least throw. But a lot of the plays that we were able to see, he was not able to go deep. He had to take these short checkdowns. Even here with the Cardinals holding in the red zone, there you can see Adrian Taylor-Demison up top for the most part. See Garrett Wilson's the guy who's trying to get open. They're able to chase Rodgers out of the pocket. He just ends up having to throw it away on that down. You can also see as far as with the Cardinals in this spot, they've got 4 players who are there. They just rush 4. The right guard for the Jets just is not able to really deliver. You have the left tackle is not able to deliver. Rodgers just gets under pressure, and then right there in the end, this is going to be 53, the newest pass rusher, Baron Browning, I believe, for the Cardinals, who they picked up. He's able to, off of the edge, just kind of keep with Rodgers, who's not able to, this is he's an older guy, he's still able to run around, but this is one of those places, at least, where the Cardinals defense just is able to hold. They just really are not able to run this same type of offense that I think they need. When we saw Rodgers with his MVPs with the Packers, the offense was similar to what Drew Petzing runs. You're having more tight ends. You're having some of that harder play action. He's kind of back to the Mike McCarthy style offense now for the most part, at least, that you're running, where you can see here, everyone's spread out wide. You're at least able to see 4 guys there. Dante Stills gets pressure almost immediately on Rodgers. Baron Browning keeps him on the edge. They're just really kind of having these different plays where guys are just covered up for the most part. The Cardinals defensive backs, you can't say enough about them. People went into this game saying they're at a disadvantage against Davante Adams. Garrett Wilson's one of the top young receivers in the league. And we saw them really clamp down on the Jets for the most part. And some of it, I think, too, is there's little plays like miscommunications like that with Davante Adams. But a lot of it ended up being that the Cardinals really took advantage of this Jets offensive line being banged up, of a slower Rodgers. When they bring a blitz like this and Rodgers hits the hot route, it's not an accurate throw, or probably more likely he's expecting Adams, who just came to the team, to be able to get there. It just kind of shows how patchwork a lot of what the Jets have done is. And Arizona just felt like they were a team that knew exactly how to be able to counter all of that here. Guys are not open downfield. Rodgers has to just throw the ball away. It was a long, long day for the Jets, and it really does feel like a lot of people at this point are looking at them going, is this Aaron Rodgers experience really going to come back next year with another year on his body? With this offense, like, what's going to be the case for the most part? Because this is something where it looks a lot like that Caleb Williams game from last week, but an a rookie. It was a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers who's back over there, Marcos.
Yeah, and one thing that I noticed about watching this film is like, I watch it from the defensive side point of trying to see what they were doing on offense. That's one of the key things to try to figure out. You see a lot of signals being given by Rodgers. So I think what's going on is Rodgers is taking over the offense. His buddy is sitting in the background. Somehow he didn't get fired, even though he's supposed to be like, I don't know why he's such a good friend with Rodgers, but you see a lot of movement in the background with the signals. So he's turning around. The things that I talk about with Kyler Murray that he should do. There's times where you need to have an offensive coordinator to be able to make the play calls for you, so you don't have to adjust or anything. He's doing full adjustments on almost everything. He's looking over to his wide receiver, giving him hand signals, turning around, giving hand signals to his other guy. You have the guard listening to see what Rodgers wants to change up when it comes to the play. He's the offensive coordinator of this team. In this situation, people seem way too confused. So, that Devontae Adams throw, and by the way, it's such a bad situation when you get your boy and you're trying to force feed him the ball. Yeah. You should not be force feeding the ball. This offense is going down the drain because of that type of that arrogance of like, hey, that's my boy. We succeeded. We're gonna run this. I'm the guy who knows more about any offense, so I'm gonna run this. And he tries to force feed him the ball even when Devontae Adams is not in the same communication. And it also goes to blocking schemes. When he had to release that ball, it's because Mack Wilson got open right up the middle. Nobody was blocking him because he didn't slide protection the right way, or because the offensive lineman thought, you know what, he's going to get picked up by the running back. We don't need to pick him up. There's Mack Wilson right in his face. He has to get rid of the ball. That's bad. That's bad. And when it comes to like, when I say that the quarterback has to be the field general out there to make the calls as well, there's certain, you still need the offensive coordinator to know what's out there, and you still need to have that trust between both the offensive coordinator and the quarterback to know what do you do in this situation and what do you call. But when you go rogue, this is what it looks like, and the Cardinals took advantage of it. And let's talk about Baron Browning after this. After you, go ahead.
This is a great example of like when you're talking about going rogue, because this is a play call. It's just looking like it's supposed to be a simple mesh concept. You've got the tight end, at least over here, who's I believe from Ohio State. Ruckert, I think, is the guy who's the tight end, at least. You got 83 is the receiver. You've got Garrett Wilson already kind of motion. Hey, he's got one-on-one coverage on the outside. You got two guys who are basically running here underneath. But the play design of what you're looking at is, if you're supposed to be running like a mesh concept, you got to take the guy out of the play for the most part like that. But you also have to be recognizing that you're going to be trying to take it out against man coverage. So it looks like it's man coverage up over here at the top. And guess what? It is. In fact, in this spot here, two guys go down here. You're supposed to, at this spot, be able to go ahead and hit that guy, at least right over the middle, who's on the route concept. With his 83, because he was clearly trying to set up at least for the block. The two guys go with him. Dadrian Taylor-Demerson back over here, he's reading Rodgers' eyes, and he recognizes as soon as the rubber out goes for that way, he needs to come down and be able to make sure that he picks up 83. That's supposed to set up Devontae Adams to be able to then have no safety over him over the middle. Where does this end up stopping, unfortunately? Watch at the right tackle spot, where Rodgers does not get enough time for the play to develop. He's reading. Zaven gets on the outside. All Rodgers has to do is step up into the pocket, essentially, and be able to throw the ball to either hit Adams, or he can just wait for that play to clear out and see if he can hit Ruckert. Instead, the Cardinals stay disciplined. They understand their assignments. They're like, here's how we guard the mesh concept. We're running with him. Once he gets to this spot, he just stays with his man coverage, runs around the guy to the outside. The tight end doesn't do a very good job of being able to pick him off. And so then Rodgers, in stepping up in the play, he panics. He goes and looks for Devontae Adams, just runs north, and then just tries to see if he can hit Devontae, who's open. The guy he should be hitting, at least if anything, is going to be right over here, rated as the guy who was on the play design. It just ends up being one of those places of where they're running a whole lot of bodies over the middle of the field. That pressure gets Rodgers off of his spot. He just I'm just throwing it down to Devontae, getting him that touchdown. Devontae's not even in a good spot for the most, but he's stopped on that route. He's supposed to be just throwing that. It's one of those places where when you're talking about a quarterback, and like you said, when there's a team situation that ends up being so quarterback heavy that it basically relies on that quarterback to be Superman. We've seen that with Kyler Murray. There's times where Cam Newton and Kyler Murray were asked to be Superman and they stepped up. There's a lot of times more often that they did not. And Rodgers ends up taking another hit on this play. It's just one of those places where you're right, at least, where the Cardinals adding Baron Browning is going to make a big difference because he did end up essentially showing in the first game he played just some of his ability to be able to impact a game.
So that's why I wanted to discuss it, because obviously that was the other big news that came forth, and people's feelings towards it. I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of underwhelmed because I was looking at other people, but I listen to That's Good Sports, and I know Brandon Perna, and I really do know that throughout the years he has been kind of touting as Baron Browning as a positive when it comes to pass rush and what he can deliver and whatnot. And on this game, I noticed two things that really got me excited. So number one, this guy gets low to the ground when it comes to rushing to the outside. He gets in that stance where he kind of has to put his hands right there, for example. Again, you pull up the right thing while I'm talking. He gets low to the ground where he's going to have his either one hand onto the ground on a 3-point stance, 2 points, or 2 hands on the ground, which is a 4-point stance. But he gets low because they discussed that he has some bend, and that's important when it comes to a pass rusher, because your pass rushers are always mostly universally going to rush to the outside, and if they don't do that, then they're going to take a bull rush up on the chest of the tackle. When you're below, when you're coming from under, that's where you generate that power. When a tackle has to kind of jump set towards you, that's where you have that bend. When they can't have both hands on their chest plates and they kind of bend, around the person and kind of make a curve. That's where you see some success when it comes to that. Right there, he executes a spin move. It's not successful, but because, Aaron Rodgers has to run it to the outside, he's in perfect position to be able to seal off any type of run.
Puts up the hand. He essentially takes Rodgers in this part where Rodgers could just, whether it's slowing up or taking the corner to the edge, going for that play. He's able to at least use that athleticism. Something we've said, at least, this is one of those plays where Dennis Gardeck, at least, he would be kind of pushing through with getting that effort on the play, being in the right spot. Browning has more athleticism, at least for that one, that we've been able to see. I've seen plays like this where Gardeck is there, but it's kind of like those Marcus Golden hustle plays. Being able to have a guy who's got a little bit more juice is one of the things that we felt like the Cardinals could need, and that's something that was unfortunate with BJ Ojolari not there. The other pass rusher we have to talk about with his first, I think it was full sack and another half sack as well, and that would be Xavier Thomas is the other one who made an impact in this game.
Yeah, I think you were the one who got me excited about Xavier Thomas, because we were doing the post draft. You were showing some of the moves that he had when it came to being able to rush from a low stance and whatnot. So I really like that low stance. But yeah, Xavier Thomas is it's kind of weird because you draft him in a place where you're not expecting too much from him. He doesn't have the career that you would get excited about, but then he comes to the NFL and he's showing little glimpses on what he can do and how he can rush. And when I saw him kind of running at full speed like he does right there. So you could tell somewhat he wants to be kind of a speed rusher to the outside, but he's able to beat tackles that way when he beats them to the outside because he has that unexpected juice that you don't see from his resume.
Right. This is just the way that a lot of what we've seen is these are young pass rushers, at least, as well. Browning's a guy, at least, who was essentially Nick Benito and others, at least, were pretty good for the most part as far as their
that move.
Where Denver's defense just didn't necessarily need him. Cardinals gave up, I believe it was a 6th round pick, I think. No, a 5th round pick, I think it was, for Baron Browning.
It was a 6th.
Because a 5th would have been a little bit close to where it was, at least, with my top line was like, if you're gonna trade more than a fifth, like it better be sixth round pick at least, 2021 third round pick. He's got 10 sacks in his career. What we've at least said with Arizona was, a lot of the way that they're gonna run their team is going to be in a place of where their identity is not going to be in one specific player. If there is a specific player it's going to be in, it'll be in their corners, and in being able to use Buda Baker at least around in different places is kind of where that identity would be. That's something where I think we'll see how he does over time, but that's something where if these younger, smaller edge rushers can pop up at least for the most part and be able to like make an impact, maintain the edge, that's pretty encouraging if you're a Cardinals fan.
Yeah, and speaking about the defensive backs, I'm really excited about like DTD getting that start against the Jets and whatnot, and obviously the defense playing the way they are. I do think that like I think Buda Baker's playing so well that it's going to be hard, almost near impossible, to try to move off of him without wanting to keep him in the room because of the fact that like the impact he brings on this defense. But DTD playing starting next to him, I love Jalen Thompson. I do. I always love this career. I love the fact that like Keim did a sneaky move to be able to get him for a fifth when he got him in the supplemental draft. I thought that was a steal. And he's played like the corner opposite, complementing opposite side of Buda Baker, where I think DTD is like Buda Baker. So obviously you have those contrasting type of differences where you can't play one over the other, and it's just hard. But I know when Jalen Thompson gets injured, no offense, Jalen Thompson, I love you, but then it gets me excited because I see more snaps from DTD to be able to see what he can do in this defense. And I mean, Garrett Williams, I cannot. That's a conundrum in itself. I love Garrett Williams. I just wish he was playing more on the outside, but he's playing phenomenal from the position he's in, and he's being moved around kind of like the way I wish they would have moved around Isaiah Simmons. But he's playing that apex slot cornerback role where he's being also asked to like play as one of the half deep safeties, and he's also coming down for run support and whatnot. And I thought to myself, this is the reason why they're not playing Keytrell, because he's playing so good. He's just playing too good in this position. But I don't know. Like, I don't know how you feel about it. He was drafted as an outside corner, and I want him to play on the outside as well to see what kind of skills that he has on the outside. Because playing corner on the outside is different from playing corner in the slot. There's a lot of differences. Some people will say it's harder to play in the slot in today's NFL because you're asked to do more. Also, you have people that don't survive in the inside that play outside. So it could be a bad move to move him back to the outside. But if he has this type of skills on the inside, I want to see what he has on the outside.
Yeah, and I think that's where the outside corner, the X receiver, that's kind of an area where what we've seen the Cardinals do with Nick Rallis is they've been able to use those defensive backs almost interchangeably. Like, you don't know where they're going to come from because Buda could be blitzing down and run support while Jalen Thompson takes a receiver, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, who's in the deep safety spot? Oh, it's not Adrian Taylor-Demerson. It's going to be Garrett Williams. You're also going to have times where DTD would be like on the field in a 3 safety look, and then Garrett Williams would follow the one guy in like a man coverage. They've been able to kind of figure out a rotation with all of these different pieces that has really been able to mix up quarterbacks in a lot of different ways. Like here you've got your outside kind of one-on-one area with I believe Max Melton's the one who's down here with Wilson on the outside. So it's going to be Star Thomas at least is right here over number 14. On this play here, you're basically just rushing 4. You've got, I think this is Murphy Bunting, I think is the one who's at least over there, but the play design is going to be for this trips down here. He's looking at Garrett Wilson. The whole goal is to try to get number 14 open. Here, though, you're able to at least see with Baron Browning down over here on this spot, Thomas comes up around the edge, at least with that quick speed, and Rodgers ends up getting a guy in his face. Browning just cuts in underneath, so all of a sudden you're in a spot where you're basically like hoping that someone's going to throw a flag at least with Garrett Wilson there, because like that's who the route's designed for. At least you can kind of see with how he's trying just to be able to move to get open. See number 14 is there. He ends up starting to run, and Aaron, he's just not as fast as he used to be with Kyler Murray. You can at least see here where Xavier Thomas just comes up behind him, makes that play for the ball, almost gets an actual interception by a defensive lineman there. Instead, of course, it just gets picked up for the most part for a turnover, and the Cardinals keep the Jets out of the end zone yet again. Just one of those great plays, at least when we were talking about having enough burst to be able to have that speed rush on the outside. And we see with Baron Browning where his skill set really has been. he runs up there on the inside and has been using spin moves. He spins to the inside, a lot of these different moves, and he's just trying to be able to get pressure on Rodgers. Look at that time, the spin move. It works. It's not going up against number 77 like the All-Pro and Tyron Smith. It's a backup. But you're able to at least say, hey, that's a move. He's able to move it to perfection. All of a sudden, Rodgers has to move outside. He should probably in this spot just be able to try to check down to Breece Hall if he can. He doesn't have that ability. Cardinals are able to make him pay. They make the play. And essentially this ends up being any sort of Jets comeback is iced. You're just in a spot where all you can say at least is this is one of those places where the Cardinals deserve their accolades as far as everything from drafting, developing, scouting. These are two guys who cost fifth and sixth round pick who are on the edge. The coverage at least down is great. You're missing your Pro Bowl caliber. One of the years, I think it was last year, Jalen Thompson, for sure it was, I think, 2022. He had an opportunity with how he played to go to the Pro Bowl, just was not on a winning team. Doesn't matter. The Cardinals, at least, with just this beat up, none of these guys are a Darius Robinson first-round draft pick. They're able to go up against and be able to get after an Aaron Rodgers, and Kaiser White with that takeaway essentially is able to save the game. Marcos, we've talked about film. We've talked about the Cardinals. We got about 5 minutes or so left here in this podcast. Let's talk about this team moving forward. Cardinals moving forward, at least, they have their bye for this week at 6-4. Upcoming after the bye is a very unique and interesting opportunity because this is probably one of the easier stretches of their schedule with one unique game in the midst of it. So upcoming after the bye week, they go on the road to the Seahawks with rest, with potentially getting Darius Robinson back. I think you're for sure going to be getting Jonah Williams back. We'll see what that impact looks like on the offensive line. You then are going to be on the road at the Minnesota Vikings, who right now are in second place in their division. They're having a great year. Vikings are 7-2. They come off of a game against the Tennessee Titans. Sam Darnold, at least, is having an interesting game where there's been a couple of turnovers. There's been times they've played some tough teams. When they've played not good teams, Vikings have just steamrolled for the most part. It's really interesting to see with how they've had Justin Jefferson get involved, a strong run game with Aaron Jones. And on defense, Brian Flores has essentially been arguably a Coach of the Year candidate despite being a defensive coordinator. You then follow up with another game against the Seahawks. So you're playing in the next, I would say, two of your next 3 games, I should say, are division games against an opponent you have not played so far yet. The Seahawks right now are not doing as well. They play the 49ers this upcoming week before they then play the Cardinals the following week. So that's a game at least that's going to be huge. They're in 4th place in the division right now. And they just had their starting center, Connor Williams, just retired at 27 years old. So you're like, okay, Cardinals are getting maybe Darius Robinson back. Center retires. This may not be a good matchup, at least while the Cardinals are rolling. This Minnesota game on Fox has been talked about potentially being flexed, which I think will be very interesting. And then let's look at how you close the season with the last 4 games of the year. New England Patriots, who just beat the Bears, but are still probably a bottom 5 team in the league. Drake May has been able to be pretty impressive so far for a rookie. They've been able to actually have improvement over Jacoby Brissett. The Carolina Panthers, who right now are Bryce Young is kind of back, and he looks like he's been able to make plays, but they really are a team that you walk into both of these games, you assume Cardinals probably should win both of these games. You then follow up with the Week 17 Los Angeles Rams and what's been kind of a down year for Matthew Stafford. The defense has been improved. And then you have Week 18 against the Niners. You already have a game ahead of them for the most part. You're really looking and say you've got 4 of your last 7 games are going to be against the division, but you're better than the Seahawks. You're probably shot to be better than the Rams. Marcos, this is a spot where if you're the Cardinals can go through here and go 1, 2, 3 in a row, you've got these next 2 games coming up. There's a really good chance that this team could end up actually finishing in a huge winning streak to finish the season. Where you're going to be talking about an 11-win team, which is something we talked about. 9-8 is maybe the best case for the season. An 11-win season with losing maybe 1 or 2 of these games would be crazy if you're the Arizona Cardinals. And it's a testament to how this team has probably not even hit their highs yet. They just are really functioning and playing well as a team. Kyler is playing well to the pact where we could say that this team has a shot probably with this schedule to win the NFC West, which is something no one probably saw coming this year. Cardinals going from a worst to a first.
Yeah. those last two games are going to be what's going to make the season. I'll tell you that right now. We're gonna probably, from what I expect from seeing that, seeing that schedule, is they're have a good chance of coming out of that at least 3-1. I would say, because you have Carolina, you have New England. We should be able to win those games. If we don't win those games, we're in trouble. We should be able to beat the Seattle Seahawks at least once, at least one time. And if you do that, like let's just say you go off 3-1, so that makes those last two games not impactful. There should be no reason we can't beat the Los Angeles Rams again. They're not having their best season. They haven't shown that they had our number with that last game. Kyler Murray obviously went off on that game. You should have somewhat of a same type of dominance in that game. And the 49ers, we've shown that we can beat them, at least go toe-to-toe with them, even if it comes down to the wire.
No,
That was a
Brandon
gritty
Ayuk,
game. So
Christian McCaffrey is back, but again, like we can talk about some of this. It's very much leaning to the Cardinals' favor. That's one of the things I think is huge for Arizona, is that their schedule down the stretch could show that they're potentially hosting a playoff game.
well, like looking at it from this perspective, it's their division to lose. I'm not, like, from what you've seen so far, like even though there was a lot of bad, there was a lot of good that this Cardinals is showing. Like this is I believe this is their division to lose at this point. They're in control.
Yeah, no, and totally, especially when you take a look at these upcoming, so their competition for the division. Let's first look at the Los Angeles Rams, who so far on the season, they have a record at least of 4 wins and 5 losses. Their schedule's been a lot tougher, and looking down the stretch, they have not played Buffalo yet. We saw Arizona play Buffalo pretty close and did lose. They still have to play San Francisco once. They do get the Jets. They also have the New England Patriots, but we're talking about how Philadelphia at least has looked with some of those guys healthy, and Saquon at 4-5 and the Cardinals at 6-4. The Rams are probably going to have to steal a game or two, one from either Arizona or one from San Francisco. And then for sure, they'll have to clean up against the Jets. They'll have to be able to win against the Saints. They'll have to win against New England. They already lost their game last week against the Miami Dolphins, which I think was a pivotal game because you get back to a 5-4 type of score. You're looking at some of the schedule down the stretch. You beat the Niners, beat Arizona. You got a shot at least for the division. The fact that they're going to have to play catch up, and Arizona is going to have some easy games like against the Saints, against the Panthers, you're going to be having a good spot. Now, the other one, at least, that's going to be fun too is, let's take a look now at the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, they're the ones who are the biggest threat in the division. They're getting Christian McCaffrey back. They at least still have a solid defense, have at least playmakers with Kittle, with McCaffrey. Brock Purdy at least is still maybe not having his best season, but he's still getting the ball to playmakers. Last week, they are still able to kind of clinch out a win against the Buccaneers. They've got it tough. They go up against not just the Seattle Seahawks, at least on Sunday. They play the Packers. They play the Bills. They'll probably get a pretty easy win against Chicago. The Rams are going to be playing for their playoff hopes and dreams, at least for that, on this Thursday night game on Prime Video. They then play the Dolphins, who, as we've seen, at least still have that rushing attack. They've got some of their guys in Tua and others back. But then they have to wrap up against Detroit and then Arizona in Week 18. If they drop games to Green Bay, if they lose to the Buffalo Bills, if the Rams, who already beat them once this year, give them a hard time, that Detroit game could be potentially one of those places where you could be playing if you're Arizona, and they've dropped 3 of those games down there. You may be Arizona going, hey, we've already beat them once. We're going to throw Clayton Tune and our backups out there because we may already have clinched the division. We don't need to necessarily go. I don't know if Jonathan Gannon's going to be in that sort of mode because it just doesn't feel right as far as being authentic to Gannon. But at the same time, this is essentially Arizona's division to lose now. This is the Niners, not their division to take. They're going to have to, at least with being behind Arizona. They've got a 5-4 type of schedule. They're a whole game behind. They're going to have to pick up one game on Arizona, and then Arizona, even if they do pick up that one game, Arizona still has the edge over them at the end of the season. They're going to have to split with the Cardinals in Week 18. There's a very good chance that when it comes down to them, we've seen how when teams have played Detroit, they've been pretty banged up and beat up the following week. There's a chance that they come down, have to play against Detroit just to get a shot to be able to play Arizona for a win against the division. Whereas the Cardinals, they're going up against the Rams, which may be out of it by that point. They're going to come in, at least for the most part, with a good shot, not having played the Lions, to be able to then capture the division at best case scenario for the Niners. This isn't something to say, like, we don't know how the future holds. Like, you don't know how things go after the bye, how Kyler goes. But the Cardinals are going to get back at Darius Robinson. We'll see how he does as far as making plays. They're going to get back at Jonah Williams. We'll see how injuries play out. But you feel, if you're a Cardinals fan right now, you feel like their odds for getting that division win are pretty strong. And I think that's something that, looking for how this season would have played out, you talk about expectations. Cardinals went into this season, we probably had medium expectations for them. We saw at 2-4 they were kind of underperforming, and now what we've seen is it seems like this is a Cardinals team that's now on the rise, and not just on the rise, they seem to be thriving and are looking to potentially make some of these games down the stretch to actually capture their first division crown in quite a while, if things all at least are able to go according to plan, Marcos, and that's something that should have fans extremely excited for the rest of this season.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's their division to lose, and looking at the schedules, and all three opponents obviously are the people who are like, threatening us. Like, this looks like, what, there's a lot of help that we're gonna need for other teams that are dominant to beat the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams, but also the Cardinals. Like, they have to come through the schedule and come out positive, and this is what's going to make it so that we get into a position to have to face them at the end of the season and do what we need to do. We got to do our job.
Absolutely, yeah. Weird, interesting, at least for the ads for those of you watching, at least on our live
Yeah,
stream.
I saw that ad.
It's great. Love it. At least that looks just like me. So, yeah, that'll wrap it up for us with this edition here of the Redbird Reboot podcast. Again, make sure you can shout out and follow all of the people who've been on here with our last show, which will get posted for the podcast, with Walter Mitchell and, of course, Joe Camo, the Cardinal Rule. Marcos, if you want to shout out where our viewers and listeners can find the rest of our content on x.com.
So find me on @PancakeSoul. Like I said, I'll put a clip here and there, and I'll break it down. If you want to send me a message, go right on ahead. If you want to have an argument, go right on ahead as well.
Absolutely. And I'm Blake Murphy @BlakeMurphy7. Make sure you're following us at least on X, as well as our YouTube channel, to build up our subscribers. Hey, Cardinals are 6-4. They've had two dominant performances from the offense and the defense. They've got in a fantastic spot for the most part. They get to have the bye week be off for right now, and then they'll get to reboot after the bye week against Seattle. And that's going to be it for us, since we have now been rebooted as well. Our show is back. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. That's it. We've been here for an hour and a half. It's time for us to log off. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend, and go Cardinals. Enjoy the bye week.